Hey everybody, welcome back to the 120th episode of Taps and Patience. I'm AJ with Audacity Micro and Subtract Manufacturing, here with Jacob of Not Precision Ingenuity. That music was really loud in my... Oh, it's still loud in my ear. That music was really loud in my ear today, and I couldn't think. Hi, Jacob.
Hello. How's it going?
Jacob's actually with Zonum Precision and then also Subtract Manufacturing.
I mean, you're so close to pronouncing it right.
It's not Zonum?
It's Zonum.
Zonum.
And watch it, forget it for the next show.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Harrison could not be with us today. He is on vacation. We tried to record an episode like yesterday, but both Harrison and I were rather busy, and so that didn't happen. So Jacob's going to be on for, I don't know, at least today, maybe more. He's also producer for Taps and Patience, if we didn't say that.
Yeah, sometimes.
So, hi, Jacob. How are you doing?
I'm pretty well, actually. It's a nice Saturday morning. Been running the Tormach this morning a little bit. Got some parts going right now. Been hanging out here, getting some subtract work done. Getting a few things in place for Taps and Patience that have been on the to-do list for way too long. But, precedent and all. But been good. What's up with you?
I was expecting this week to be not very busy, and then it was. It was like catch-up busy. So the last couple weeks, I've been doing a ton of teaching and stuff. And then this week, when I did actually have some time gaps, this is where everything else got scheduled for. And so I've been kind of running around and, doing all the little odds and ends that have been put off.
Feeling the pain, in other words.
Yeah, it has been a little bit more chill. Like, I hung out for an hour this morning before coming out to the shop, and I hung out with family yesterday, and Scott came and we watched a movie instead of doing the podcast. But next week should be another fairly chill week, and then I'll be kind of back to an average schedule of like normal busy days, but not like super busy.
I mean, is it actually average if your new average is just crazy busy?
I mean, average is average regardless of if it's crazy busy or not. But
yeah,
no, it'll be like basically, let's see, next week I just have my night classes. And then I think I have a week of no classes. And then I have a couple weeks of just like 8-hour normal 40-hour week kind of classes. And then I add in Subtract, and I add in Audacity Micro, and I add in YouTube on top of that. But that's normal.
Yeah.
As long as I'm not doing 60 hours plus trying to do my own stuff, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, July is coming up very soon, which means Big Job is coming to a new end. Also, I'm running out of YouTube videos to edit at the moment. So, you should get after that for sure once you have some free time.
We need to do one before the end of the month for Tormach.
Yes, contractual and everything.
Yeah. So I have a couple videos that I have planned out that are not project videos necessarily, but I just need to record them.
Sure. That's half the battle, is getting the camera out and actually getting set up to do it.
Yeah. Or just being in the shop. It seems to be my battle recently.
Yeah. No, it's been hard to catch you in passing with everything else you've got going on. It's went from no classes to where's AJ? Why hasn't he responded to my Discord message in like 9 days?
Yeah. But I don't know. It's starting to normalize a little bit now.
Good. So what's new in the shop?
So one thing that did happen while I was gone in my shop is a little bit more cleaner and more organized now.
Ooh. What fairies came and did that?
My father fairy. While I've been teaching, my dad's come in, here and there, and he's been working on cleaning the ceilings of the shop because they were still like covered in horse grime from back when this was a stable. And it looks so much brighter and nicer. And plus, he's been replacing some of the lights for me. So I'm now big LED bar lights everywhere. Instead of, if you look back at some of my old videos, I have those like kind of flower LED lights, if that makes sense. The ones that like have 3 or 4 petals that you can kind of aim around. And those were bright, but they were still point lights. And so you still got shadows when you're like deburring and stuff. Whereas the bar lights are, not point lights. And so you're less likely to get shadows when you're working on something. And it's a lot nicer.
Yeah, that was that. Well, when I first moved into this house, because Tormach in the garage, the entire garage had two incandescent light bulbs mounted to the ceiling. Yeah. One over the like little corner laundry area that they had like set up, and one just in the most random place in like the opposite corner. And it only had about a quarter-inch of clearance from the garage door when it went up and down, and that like always worried me that someone wasn't going to be paying attention, open the garage door and shatter, a bulb and make glass all over the place. So that was like the first thing I did. Was I actually bought the first lights that I bought were from Walmart, some Walmart in-house brand, and they were like $19 at the time. And I bought a metric boatload of them. I think I hung like 15 of them in my little garage. And holy cow, did that make a difference? And then I upgraded from there. American Greenworks maybe is the ones I have now. But
were those were strip lights that you were putting in, right? Not point lights.
No, they're strip lights. So they're like 4.5-foot bars with three tubes. They're supposed to like be the knockoff of the fluorescent commercial lights.
Yeah. And they like, did they daisy chain together, or did you have to put in outlets and stuff for them?
So they were able to be daisy chained together, but I put a bunch of outlets in because So when I moved in, the garage had drywall on the walls, but no insulation in any of the walls, and the ceiling was completely open. And so I just ran around. Also, our garage door opener was plugged in via an extension cord tied in the rafters. There was 2 outlets in the entire garage, like one right by the door going in and one by the laundry area they had set up. And so I very quickly remedied that and put like 10 outlets in the ceiling, half of them switched, half of them full power, which has been great because then I put a brand new garage door opener in. And apparently my queue is awful. They want subscriptions for everything and don't integrate with Home Assistant. So I got one of those Rat GDO is what they call it, Rage Against the Garage Door Opener. And it's a box that emulates the Security 2.0 that the Chamberlain and the LiftMaster openers use. So you like wire that thing in place. So it was perfect for stuff like that. I have one of those, dual outlets with a USB port in it. So my USB charger for my Rat GDO was able to work perfectly. Great tip, by the way. They're like $3 more to buy the ones with the USB charger built in.
At one point is when we were, I think, pretty much first moving into this house, our garage door opener, like the actual pad, the button thingy, was going bad. And I sent a text to my dad asking, like, hey, what do I need to buy to fix this? And he was like, you just need any button with your kind of garage door opener. And I was like, okay. And so I went onto Amazon and I bought the biggest red button that I could find and installed that as like the inside the garage button.
That's
so funny. Now you can walk into our garage and slap this big old 4-inch red button. It makes me happy.
I should 3D print one of those to go over the top of mine. That's glorious.
It's actually very convenient. If you're like carrying groceries or something, it's very easy to just bop with your elbow to open it up.
The button that came with ours is like the size of like a wallet. Like it's a good sized button already, but it's just what came with. But of course the security, whatever that they have integrated requires like active circuitry. You can't just touch 2 wires together and garage open now. Sadly.
Yeah, mine's an older one where it's just touch 2 wires together and garage open now.
That's phenomenal. Those work so well. I do have to say it's been really nice having that and other things in the shop integrated into my Home Assistant. Like when if you leave the house and the garage door is left open, it knows that you're like leaving the house because geolocation. And if you've left the garage door open, it'll like message you and say, are you sure you wanted that open? Send you notification. And like on my dashboard, it'll just pop up with a little square in the corner that isn't normally there because normally I don't need to see the status of the garage door. If it's not open, I don't need to see. And then when it's open, it like bright red in your face, like, by the way, garage door's open. It loves when I'm mowing the lawn because the very corner of my yard is just outside the geolocation. So as I mow back and forth, it's like, oh, your garage door's open. And then it doesn't care. And then I go outside the boundary again and I just keep going back and forth and I get like 40 notifications in my pocket, which is great.
I've thought about doing kind of more smart home, smart shop kind of integrations in here. But then you hear like Jamie's stories where he's like, I put all my lights on on smart lights so I can turn them on with Home Assist, and then our internet went down, and now I have to poke my lights with a stick to get them turned on or whatever. That's JSpec Engineering on the Lone Machinist podcast, by the way, if anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about. And so that makes me a little bit more hesitant to do it.
Speaking of Jamie, shout out Jamie. Yeah, that's how mine used to be. And then when I moved into this house, I vouched to never have a smart home like that ever again with redundancies. So basically everything is like a real power on, power off, but also has like added smart functionality. So like if my internet went out, number one, Home Assistant is local. So it's just on my network. So as long as I have power, I have Home Assistant. And then beyond that, I use smart switches that are Z-Wave instead of smart bulbs everywhere. In most, like when I just need a light switch that goes on and off, I just use a smart switch because they're still a switch and they still turn on and off, even if you have no internet.
Okay, so let's say you're building your dream shop. You start from the grounds up. You have a metal shell or whatever. What are you putting in it?
Smart-wise?
Like in terms of technology, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I'm definitely doing power monitoring on like all the circuitry.
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah, that would be awesome.
So like they make ones that go in your breaker panel and can check each branch circuit. Actually, realistically, it'd probably, if they make them in the commercial space, given my garage shop, it doesn't matter, but so probably like a span smart panel that you can turn on and off breakers remotely and energy monitoring and all the cool stuff there. They also do they measure power factor. So if you have inductive loads like motors, given in a home shop, it matters less. But depending on how your electrical is built, you might be billed more for higher inductive loads because of power factor. And so you can like measure that and monitor it. Surge protectors on everything. I would probably do millimeter wave presence detection everywhere. And probably actually Bluetooth source tracking. So you can put like 4 or 5 Bluetooth sources in your shop. And then just by having your phone or your smartwatch or whatever entity you want, it just knows within very small margin where you're at in your shop. And so you could use that for logging purposes. I super wouldn't want any of these things if the cloud was remotely involved with this. Only if like I actually had access to all the data directly and not some abstraction that, you know, the great Bezos overlords decide to allow us to.
Yeah. It would be interesting to like, when you first wire it in, like put everything on big old relays that are just normally closed and have like a PLC that can just open things if you want them to programmatically. So you could like turn off your air compressor or turn off all your lights or something with a PLC. That might be kind of cool.
That'd be super cool. Have you heard, there's a guy on YouTube called Cursed Controls. Have you heard of him before?
No.
So he's an electrician who just built his house, his, you know, dream house, final house, whatever. I think he's fairly small still, but he decided to wire his entire house with like a 30 by 60 PLC panel in it. And the entire, you know, 3,000 square foot house is wired in rigid EMT conduit. So he has poles everywhere. I mean, like just looking at the way that he built his entire service is genuinely insane. And so he's doing almost exactly that. Like, I don't want actual smart home. Instead, I will just have a switch that connects to a relay in my basement that turns on and off, you know, this circuit for this light. It's genuinely insane.
One thing I have always wanted, and this is absolutely unnecessary and just like, this might even be beyond luxury, but I want a big TV like on every wall that are all tied together so that like I can put on a YouTube video or whatever as I'm working, and it'll just, no matter where I look, there will always be one place where I can see it.
Do you have a TV in your shop currently?
I have a TV that I never use because it's always in the wrong spot. So it's easier for me just to carry around my phone or my tablet.
That makes sense.
But then I leave my tablet in weird places, and then I'm just listening to the audio as I'm somewhere else.
Yeah. That's my problem is the second that I have a distraction like that is I'm either paying attention to what I'm doing like I'm supposed to, and the TV's just doing whatever. But then the second that I like pay attention to it, I've now not been paying attention for the last like 9 minutes, and oh shiny gets me very excited about what's going on. Now I'm like rewinding whatever's on the YouTube video or whatever to go back to what I missed. Generally, my background content in the shop is Diesel Creek.
I don't know who that is, but
you know,
I can kind of guess. Diesel Creek?
No. Yeah, you haven't seen him?
I'm guessing they do diesel stuff.
Yeah, name's like Matt. He runs it's just him on the channel. He buys a lot of auction, big dozers and trucks and crazy stuff and gets them running and brings it back to his shop.
I definitely have different tiers of like stuff that I like, either podcasts that I listen to or YouTube videos that I watch while I'm working. And there's like, I just kind of have a class of entertainment that is just stuff that goes on in the background. And sometimes I phase out of it for half an hour and it's fine. Like I wouldn't, watch. And this is, if you talk to like Scott's always upset because I don't watch movies or TV shows that he wants to talk about. And it's because those require my attention. And so I can't really watch those when I work. So those have to go in my fairly limited, like just sit down and pay attention to the thing time, which sometimes may be, an hour a week if I'm lucky. But a YouTube video that I don't care as much about, I can just kind of put that on and, if I phase out for half an hour, it's fine. It doesn't bother me. Like a gaming stream or something. Like it doesn't matter and it's not going to draw so much of my attention that it's taken away from my work.
Everybody, AJ just rips Apex Legends while working.
No, you can actually see. Oh, well, in my last video, you can actually see me watching a game. So someone can go comment on this YouTube video or the other YouTube video what game I'm watching.
That's funny. I mean, I probably find it in 2 seconds, but
yeah, no, you're not allowed to. But whoever finds it will get a shout out because you go through and watch all of my videos. Haha.
That's right, and like them, and then maybe AJ will turn it into a YouTube short. Speaking of YouTube shorts, I have been seeing those on my feed. What's up with that?
I wonder if I'm out of those yet, the ones that I've pre-scheduled. But social media is a thing that we need to processitize for Subtract. Basically, we are realizing that AJ cannot do all of the sales in social media for Subtract because if it's dependent on AJ, it doesn't get done because it's so far down my priority list. So I have been working on building out like a social media system, which really isn't as complicated as it sounds. It's basically an easy way of finding content from the library of content that I already have, documenting that, like recording some metrics and that kind of thing. And then, posting that content on the YouTube channel. And eventually that will be something that we hand off to probably like a teenager. I know Jacob had someone he was recommending, or there's probably a couple kids in my church that would do it.
Or if any listeners want to be the social media manager.
Yeah, or if any listeners want to be a social media manager. Fun fact, this is why we hired Jacob, and then now he's doing other stuff.
Yeah. Whoops, sorry.
But overall, that seems to have gone pretty well. There is definitely a quality difference between like I'm gonna have a artist sit down and take the time to create thoughtful, unique, original content versus like, hey, let's use a tool that can look at our YouTube videos and try to choose out some of the best clips of our YouTube videos. But some content is better than no content, and it is what it is.
Those clip generation tools online are like little black boxes that you just input stuff into, and the stuff that it spits out is like, yes, it is what they say that it's going to be, but there's like no indication as to really what it's doing on the inside to make that happen. And because there's no tuning or fine control or like, slapping on the wrist, telling it good robot or bad robot. And because of that, you get locked into this like weird hole of, I just feed it clips and it gives me something. And you just assume that if it gives me 100 clips, one of them is going to stick to the wall.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a market for a better tool, but I'm currently too busy building other software tools. Although I may or may not have played with our automation stack for Subtract and seen if I could input that and have it do some of that for me. And with varying results, it was able to do some of the heavy lifting about creating the clips.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, so our automation platform is called N8N. And it's not open source, but it's self-hostable. So we have a cloud stack set up for Subtract critical infrastructure. And so it's kind of tossed on there. And it's a low code platform. It's pretty drag and drop with nodes that you can do data processing. You can take triggers from. It's pretty integrated. There's a lot of other places that you can pull data in from. It's pretty similar to Make, is another program that's on the internet, and it's less similar but semi-similar to like Zapier. But it's, I think, more powerful. It's definitely more complicated. But you can just like connect it to Google Drive and tell it, look in this folder for podcast transcriptions, and then pass that to an AI and feed it a system prompt. And N8N is very much built on AI being the core of it. Like, yes, there are JavaScript nodes that you can do data validation with. Like our order numbers for Subtract are generated using a code node because it pulls in a number from a database, does some control with that, and then appends and does some math to the number. Well, you can also just like take that number as an input and feed it to an LLM and have the LLM do it for you. But I've had too many issues with them hallucinating and giving me completely the wrong things, even though I feed it something semi-simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can just feed it a transcript, have an LLM process it. It has access for MCPs and some other pretty cool advanced LLM stuff. And you can plug into basically any model that you want and do some processing. And I haven't figured out how to make it actually do the video editing side of things yet. But there are definitely Python packages that will do some pretty crude video editing. In which case, like, I'm sure that I could spin up a Python fast API service to do the video editing in 2 seconds. But that was interesting. It was an interesting thought experiment.
This kind of stuff is a good example of a thing that is very hard to do with AI. I think it'll be a long time before AI gets to the point where it does a good job of understanding what humans will find interesting. I mean, Facebook and Instagram have been trying to do this stuff for a long time with their algorithms, and they've never really nailed it. I'm sure they have proven that they can get better retention on their platforms or whatever, but it's kind of in the form of like junk and garbage that's just kind of overloading your brain and kind of making you go, what is happening? Instead of stuff that is truly like interesting and insightful. Like an AI may be able to build better retention on a video, but it's never going to I shouldn't say never because AI changes so fast, but it's going to have a much harder time creating a video that makes you go, wow, that's interesting. Or, wow, that makes me feel things. And that's kind of where having a human step in to be the, I'm going to use the term artist here, but the artist to create those, that content is like humans are still better at that. And I think they will be basically indefinitely.
They don't call them creatives for no reason.
Yeah. It's also a good example of something that like provides some value to the company, but not really enough for me to justify hiring anybody. Like
definitely
full-time creative for our social media is so low on our priority list that it's actually a pretty good thing for AI to step into.
For sure. AI, I mean, they like generative and recursive AIs are really good. Like I call them unlockers, like they're keys to like you hit a moment in a thought process that you're working on, and it might be something as stupid as coming up with with a name for a social event that you're doing. You can generally feed it a prompt that'll at least help you get on your way. I was doing that for a group that I was a part of, and it was like, hey, here's the event, here's what we call it right now, here's what we're doing at that event, give me 1,000 possible name suggestions for what we should call it.
Yeah.
I don't need a description of what they mean. I don't need. I just tell me, give me 1,000 names, and it's just like, okay. And I just connected to the O4 Mini ChatGPT API, and it was like, oh, cool. Here's 1,000 names that cost you an eighth of a penny.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that just saved me 2 hours of sitting here scratching my brain.
I've used it some with school.
Really?
For a couple different things. So one thing that like ChatGPT is really, really good at is just like, here is my word vomit, make it presentable and well organized. So I'll like go through a topic, I'll make a bunch of notes on it, but it won't be anything that I could like present to, my boss or my class or whatever. And I can just kind of hand that to ChatGPT and be like, make this good. And, it'll use all the information that I have there, but then just kind of make it presentable. It's really what it does. The other thing that's been really good for teaching is like, here is a sample problem, ChatGPT, give me 5 more variations of this problem.
Oh, that's smart. That's a good one.
For, like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, the part is oversized by, 2 thou. Your current wear offset for the relevant tool is, 4 thou. What way do you need to adjust it to make the part inspect? That kind of thing.
Right.
Like, I could sit there and, type in 10 different versions of that problem, or I could have ChatGPT go through and generate them for me.
That's amazing. I do personally have a cheat code that super helps me with your first, not problem, but your first use case of taking word vomit and turning it into something closer to presentable. I use AI often enough that I really feel like I've gotten a sense of like when you can smell it, like, when you see something that you think it might have had a hand in. My cheat code or my tactic that I've been using is in your prompt, whether in your original prompt or in a secondary prompt, you can prompt it to write in a style. So I will pick a book, like I have Drive the Truth About What Motivates Us by Daniel H. Pink. Like that's one that I was reading semi-recently. I can just tell it, write this response in the style of Daniel H. Pink, and it changes completely the like structure and the way that it comes across. And it has no problems doing it. I have like received not medals, but like extreme compliments
Accolades
about my writing from stuff that I have 99% pulled, like stuff that doesn't matter, right? Like just, a write-up document for some process that I'm working on for a group, and they look at it and be like, oh my God, you wrote, this is so wonderfully written and it's so insightful, and it's straight out of AI.
Yeah. Ooh, process documentation is another really good one for ChatGPT. I have been working on that recently with, we did it was an inspection process for Subtract. I'll probably also just adopt it into Audacity Micro, and a shop agreement, a vendor agreement for Subtract. And that was very much just kind of AJ word vomited into Obsidian, which is the app that I now use for basically everything text. But also we use to kind of organize our processes. But I took that word vomit, I put it into ChatGPT and was like, hey, help clarify this a little bit. And took that and, did some rehumanization on it. And it saved me hours. So,
it's really, really good from going from nothing to something. It's less good at going from something semi-polished to something usable. But yeah, it's just like any other tool in your toolbox. You'll get better at using it the more you use it and the more odd use cases that you put it through. And playing with different models and learning how they each do different things. I was struggling with like Docker the other day for our testing deployment stack. Mm-hmm. And like chasing my tail, reading the docs, getting it connected. And it was like a simple networking error that I don't remember if it was Gemini or Grok. One of those two was just like, oh yeah, here you go. And just knew the fix. So it's great.
I don't think I've ever used AI for problem solving. I've seen people do it. Well, I guess other than like me playing around with coding stuff. But I've never like explained a problem to it and then asked it for solutions. One of the guys in one of my classes did, however, where he had a lathe set up I don't remember what we were trying to do, like dialing in an axial tool holder, I think is what it was, dialing it in for center. And he took a picture of it and was like, what am I doing wrong? And sent it to Chat GPT. And it actually gave some semi-useful answers. And one of the points was actually the right answer, which was basically his metrology loop was too long. Going back a step, what we were doing is we have 5 ST10 lathes in that shop. And I've done a ton of mill work in that shop, but very little on the lathes, because the lathes were like, all of them were set up completely differently. All the tools were in different places. They had different tools in them. We were missing a ton of the inserts. All of the, some of the tool holders are damaged, and I'm not as good at turning anyway. So I stuck a lot more to the mills where I was happy and safe and comfortable. But during this last class, I was like, all right, we're fixing this. And so we tore out every tool holder, took off all of the tooling blocks from all of the lathes, and then built them all back up standardized. And with that, we were putting axial tool holders on spots where there had never been an axial tool holder. So things like the boring bar tool holders and the drill tool holders. But to do that, you need to make sure that they are concentric with the spindle. And to do that, you put an indicator on the chuck and, do the rotating thing to sweep them in. And this group had been kind of struggling with it. And they took a picture and sent it to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT was like, hey, your metrology loop's too long. It didn't say it so colloquially, but it used the word metrology loop. And sure enough, it was right. Their indicator was sticking out about 1.5 miles, and it was sagging in the different orientations. And that was screwing with their measurements, so they couldn't get, those last couple tenths dialed in. And ChatGPT spotted it and they fixed it, which I thought was very interesting, because that's not something I think most machinists would know to look for, is the length of, your measuring tools and thinking about them sagging under gravity. So
it's funny, for a group of guys who care so much about rigidity, you can forget about rigidity.
Yeah, I know, right? No, rigidity only exists when you're machining and not measuring. Didn't you know that?
Yeah, no, exactly. That makes sense. That's why I own a Tormach, because I'm extremely conscious of rigidity all the time, because I have to be. That will change one day.
Everything is rubber has become a staple of mine in my classes. Also, the OODA loop. I've just started teaching that to all of my classes. And when people are doing confused, I just tell them to do the OODA loop. And it saves me a lot of hand holding.
Help them develop some critical thinking skills.
Yep. Which really, for a lot of my classes, is the most important thing. Because a lot of the times I'm teaching stuff that's kind of more advanced than what they're going to be using in their job. They'll be like an operator, but I'm teaching them like some, setup skills. And they don't really need to know the setup stuff. But if it can help them think critically about when there is a problem, that right there is the big win. And especially with my Department of Corrections people, out of the 30 or 40 or whatever Department of Corrections guys I've had go through, I mean, maybe 1 or 2 of them is actually going to go into manufacturing when they get out. But that whole thinking critically thing is a life lesson that they can use.
Extremely.
So,
yeah, there's a lot that you can learn in manufacturing that totally translates across a lot of industries. I've been spending time recently in Kyle from the Discord. Shout out Kyle's shop. Been running some 440C like knife blanks, and apparently 440C just like chews through inserts. Most of the like bulk removal, the adaptive is done with a 3-inch face mill with some YG. I want to say they're SEHT inserts, whatever they are. But man, after every like 20 parts, you have to swap those inserts, which is mind-boggling from someone who has 1 horsepower rated, probably half of that usable on my machine. Like, oh, the only reason why I ever have to replace inserts or tools is because I crashed them, not because I actually did anything useful with them. But yeah, like hanging out in somebody else's shop and learning to run his controller on his machine and how people do their processes different was pretty eye-opening from someone who hasn't worked in. I haven't worked in a lot of industry shops, and I've spent time in, a dozen shops here or there. In passing, hanging out, running parts, all the above. So surprising how everyone does it so differently.
Yeah, I've gotten to be in quite a few shops recently between like fusion teaching and then school teaching kind of stuff. I just did a shop tour of they're a large manufacturing company and also a government prime contractor, a military prime contractor here in Indianapolis. It was the biggest shop I have ever been in. In fact, I believe it was the biggest building I have ever been in. And they had multiple buildings like this. It would make IMTS feel small. Like, it was just, the scale of this place was incredible. They had a VF2 that just absolutely looked like a toy. They had a bunch of big, huge, not Mazak. What's the other M company? No, not Matsura. I'm blanking on that name. It'll occur to me later. But they had a bunch of these huge horizontals that, like, the platform to work on them is literally like 12 feet in the air. And even those did not feel as large as they would in something like a Makino. They had a bunch of these huge, giant Makinos. They had one of them that has the like 3-story tall pallet rack system. Just mammoth machines, and they did not feel big in this place. They were all like Cat 50 tool holders and just mammoth shop. And some of the stuff they were doing there was kind of wild. They were very like manufacturing straight out of the 80s. I probably shouldn't go too far into some of the problems that they were having, but they're sending classes to me to kind of help deal with some of the problems that they're having. I probably can't talk about them too much because they're a prime, but
that makes sense.
Just the scale of that place was insane. Some of their tools were wild too. I think it was some of the, I don't know if impressive or hilarious is the right word here, but they had some drills that were like, they had a Cat 50 with like a big ER50 collet or whatever. And then inside that, they had one of those like straight shank adapters. And that would go to like an ER32 collet. And then inside that one, they had another adapter that went to like an ER16 collet. And then inside that one, they had one that went to like an ER11. And this tool is literally like 36 inches long. And it had like I don't know, probably like a number 29 drill or something at the end of it. Because they were having to drill so deep inside these parts.
Hey, reach is reach.
Yeah, it was. I was highly amused at it. I mean, I don't know how else you would do it other than like a really long custom tool holder of some kind. They had a really cool, I guess boring bar would be the word, but it was like clearly custom made for their specific purposes. It was like a welded steel frame, and it had like copper tube like hard plumbed through the middle of it. That's for cool. TSC. They had some cool stuff. They also had some major problems, but it was a cool shop. Sorry, I went to there, and I was in another shop the other day. It was in Southern Indiana. They were a job shop, but they also probably had 100 mills. Wow. Or 100 machines total, I should say. Some mill turns, some live tooled lathes, some mills, 5-axis, 4-axis. They had it all. And they were a job shop, and they were saying that their number 2 customer was Fictive, which I thought was really interesting.
Really?
Because I must have misinterpreted or misheard something, but I was under the impression that Fictive had largely pulled out of the U.S. and were sending most of their stuff overseas. Maybe they are sending most of their stuff overseas. But this company, they were doing a ton of work. And as I was like helping them program some stuff, like, you know, I could see where they were from, and they were coming from Fictive. So super interesting that is still viable for a large shop. I think of like Xometry and Fictive as a small shop thing.
Totally.
But this place was not small.
Yeah, I have this weird like sense with Xometry as being a small shop who is on Xometry, who hasn't done a Xometry job in quite a while, about like there are the like trials and tribulations that you have to go through to make it on Xometry, right? Like you kind of got to like swim through the mud before you get to the good stuff on Xometry. You know, my first 5 jobs, I was lucky to make, 50 or $100 on a job. And that was like, everyone was excited that you were making money. But then you hit premium and it gets, maybe a little bit better. And then you talk to people like Luke, who we had on the show, and he's ultra premium. And again, still just has a Tormach, like nothing special. And that's his primary, runs, does great, but is able to cherry pick and actually has access to jobs that make sense. Like you can try to niche down as much as you want, but unless you have access to the resources to be able to do that, it's super hard on a platform like Xometry. And I have spent basically zero time looking into Fictive from a vendor perspective.
Yeah, I need to check back into them. When I first started, I went, I'll wait until I'm a little bit more established and know what I'm doing more, because I know Fictive is a little bit more picky than Xometry is, and so I don't want to offend them. So I'm going to, use Xometry for all my screw ups, and then,
sure,
I can go to Fictive when I am better at being a machinist.
Totally.
But yeah, I haven't looked back into them. I did just find out about another company like them, or like us, like Subtract,
Sure.
from a programmer that I met and talked to the other day. And I'm blanking on the name of that company, but they're a Y Combinator company, which is interesting. I would have thought that Y Combinator would have been interested in physical manufacturing at all.
Interesting. So they're under the Y Combinator umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that I've done a lot of research into what platforms are out there, but it seems like there's another one that pops up. One that I've been getting ads for lately. I don't think it's a cooperative of any kind or a network, but it's Better CNC.
Oh, I haven't heard of them at all.
I think that they have a YouTube channel. Again, I haven't looked into it. Their branding and their kind of brand image makes them very much look like they're fairly
large. This is a Squarespace site.
Yeah, but if you spend any time like looking at it, I think it's like a guy in a garage / something slightly more than that.
I recognize their quoting engine too.
It's
like AMFG or something like that.
Yeah, automated. Yeah, no, I'm familiar with their quoting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so they, I believe, are just one shop,
right,
with automated quoting.
Their like brand image on their ads that I've been getting very much feels like the network.
Really?
Even Parts Badger was like that too when I first started getting ads for them. I don't know if that's just the space they're trying to compete in, or if that helps in terms of consumer trust, public relations kind of stuff. I don't know.
Okay,
it's really interesting.
Right here on the Better CNC website, at Better CNC, we are the builder. Any order is from us. You know exactly who's building it. No unknown machinist network.
Gotcha. Interesting.
I am going to make a prediction about manufacturing. I think everybody is going to move towards these like instant online quoting websites. Like whether you're a small shop or a big shop, I think this is going to be a fairly normal thing. And there's tools that are slowly popping up to make that happen.
Totally.
So if you guys want to get ahead of the wave, get instant quoting on your website.
Yeah.
It's something you can do right now by just paying money. Like
who is offering instant quoting, or like actual instant like website based quoting right now?
Well, there was that like AMFG. There's what's the thing that Nick does? Paperless Parts does it.
Paperless does instant?
And I believe so.
Gotcha.
At very least, they have a good quote interface for the customer. Maybe it's not instant, but
sure,
I believe it is. I don't know. I don't remember the names, but you can Google it, and it's like just a thing you can throw money at and have solved.
Lots of money, yeah, by the way.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
Absolutely not.
But it's not outside the realm of something a small shop could afford.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, even Toolpath is in the realm of like, it kind of makes sense. I will say that I remember seeing guys on the internet talking about Toolpath in their small shops. There was a guy on YouTube, I think it was Smith Coding and Design is the YouTube channel. He's got a Sile and does Xometry work. And he was like talked about his workflow where he before accepted a job from Xometry and went through Toolpath. I remember looking at Toolpath and being like, yeah, sure, let's look at this. And it was $1,500 a year. And I was just like, how does this make any sense? Like, all right, not only am I not making very much money from the Xometry jobs, now I have to pay for this. And Fusions, like if you pay monthly for Fusion, that's only $85 a month. How is Toolpath $125? That just didn't make sense to me. But after like actually being able to play in Toolpath a little bit and talking with Justin a little bit about some of the, or hearing Justin talk about some of the ins and outs, is like, oh, okay, this product totally makes sense. I doubt that Toolpath will have a embeddable iframe type instant quoting engine particularly soon, but it's not that hard to go from, especially once API access. Please hurry up, Justin. Once like that happens, it would not be too difficult to throw something together to use their services.
I don't think most machinists would have the willingness or capability of doing that, though. Probably like most small shop owners. But I don't know. Maybe it would be interesting to see someone like form a partnership with Toolpath and be like, we're just going to use your quoting engine in our interface.
Totally.
That could be, if anyone wants a startup idea, go do that. Because I think automatic online quoting for all these shops is going to be something we see over the next 10 years. That might be optimistic with shops still failing to incorporate probing into their workflows and things that have been proven and have been around for longer than the internet. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future.
Yeah, I definitely can see that happening, especially if we get a bit of a swing back to like younger people joining the talent workforce of manufacturing. People who haven't just been doing it for 40 years and have their ways. You know, I was just talking to a good friend of mine locally here. He worked at a job shop. He's been in manufacturing, was, machining on naval carriers. And he talks about his shop, and like no one is willing to no one's willing to adopt an ERP in their shop.
Yeah.
Like they have their, anarchy systems, no Kanban, no, it's like, it's just chaos. And I do not understand it and how that works. But yeah, I could see a lot changing as more younger people join the workforce and are put into positions where they're allowed to be creative and think outside of the box and do interesting things. Yeah, like instant website-based quoting was a huge draw of mine when I would go find places before I was a job shop and I need parts made for personal projects or for whatever else. It's a difficult problem to solve, but the tools are there. The tools are absolutely there. Like we're on the path to solve it with Subtract. Like it's on the roadmap. There needs to be some more conversation with Toolpath about what that looks like, using their services and integrating it. I think we pretty much have their blessing at this moment to play around and figure out what it does. Like they're in their infancy and are happy to see what happens and people using their tool. But like Send Cut Send is coming into the market and is also going to be using Toolpath for not just estimation, but CAD automation as well, or CAM automation. But it's there, right?
Yeah. I have been programming things with Toolpath recently for classes because I'm trying just to throw as many parts as I can in our students. And a lot of the stuff I'm doing, I'm trying to keep fairly simple. I'm trying to avoid parts that require soft jaws just because that adds a lot more like time and setup into a program versus just a prismatic part. And do you know what Toolpath nails basically every time? Is prismatic parts. So I've just been, designing something quick, throwing it in Toolpath, running the simulation to make sure it's good. Maybe the one problem we have is the tool library at school does not match up with our standardized Subtract library, which I hopefully just fixed with a new tooling order for the school.
Oh, nice.
And like just throw parts at it, print a quick setup sheet out of Fusion, give them the program, and say, go run this. And just the repetition, I think, is by far the best thing for the students, because that's how you find like the weird troubleshooting stuff. And actually, really, when you're teaching like how to prove out a program, it's not a terrible thing, even if the program does something dumb. I can't think of any examples of this other than like AJ didn't leave enough stock to make the part easily, but giving students with a program that has issues is good for teaching them on proving out programs. But I haven't had any issues with the cam coming out of Toolpath.
I do know that there was an issue with some linking moves that was happening for a little while that was leading to possible crashes because of dogleg moves and the weird interpolation of G0s compared to G1s.
Yeah.
Especially on like host controls, I think was like where that was an actual issue.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we had a great conversation about that in the Discord. I think EJ had tried it and ran into some issues with it. And I believe that they're at a position where that's fixed to a point where it's usable again. But it's one of those, like, if you're simulating, linking moves, you're not actually watching the real simulation of it. And
yeah,
you can't catch it until it's on the machine. And now you have an issue. So,
yep.
Speaking of the Discord.
Oh, you want me to do my thing?
Yeah, it's time.
Speaking of the Discord, we have no, sorry. We have a wonderful group of Patreons. Those Patreon support us at patreon.com/tapsandpatience, which I don't think I've ever said that link out loud. Those Patreons include, but are not limited to, Kyle K., Devin at Sinister Machine Works, James and Ben at Prickly Pear Prototypes, Cam S., Shep at Alderson Prototypes, Jacob, Jason S., Joshua H., Christian C., Dylan at Got Chips, Freaky Climber, Prescott at 1Z2Z Systems, Trey V., Guy L., Alexander B., Scott at Design the Everything, Jamie at JSpec Engineering, I want to mention, Chris Zyke at, he has a company. Is he just Zyke Precision? Or Zyke Manufacturing? Something like that?
I think it's Zyke Precision.
EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Chris at Thought Bomb Design, and as ever, Jake Brownson. We also have new Patreon, Austin W. Thank you, Austin. We appreciate you. All of our Patreons, whether they're paid or not, there's a free tier, get access to our weekly Q&A, which we will go to here in a second. All paid members get early access to all of our episodes and access to the Discord, where there's all kinds of fun stuff that happens in the Discord. Frankly, I think that's our best Patreon reward, and you can get that at the $4 a month tier. The $10 a month tier is exactly the same thing, but also we say your name. Oh, and the Taps and Patience website doesn't exist anymore. Our hosting provider curled up and died, so they're gone now. If you found that website useful, send me a message and we'll resurrect it. Otherwise, it'll probably just become like a links page.
Yeah, or just comment. It'll be something. It's on my to-do list.
Yeah. Q&A. Cameron S. Hey, any tips on using a parting blade on a lathe? I'm going to assume this is CNC. Okay. And I'm going to assume you mean a carbide tipped one, not like a high-speed steel old school one. I guess if we're assuming CNC lathe. As I mentioned previously, I don't like lathe, but generally go slower than you think is kind of always my first thought. And really, really, really be sure about your alignment to make sure that you're not like rubbing the side of it. That's probably super beginner stuff. But, and if check your center line, it's better to be below center line than above center line. Sorry, basics is all I've got there.
Yeah, keep in the cut. Like, don't let it grab, especially in grabbier materials. 304 stainless, I'm talking to you. Yeah, make sure that your inserts are good, and just let it feed a little slower on the SFM. If you are talking about a manual lathe, refer to James Clow42 on YouTube. He has a pretty good video about parting with carbide on a manual lathe.
Sean H. Any tips for drilling A36 with carbide drills? 0.0 or 0.1094 in diameter. I'm drilling 5/8 deep. Should I peck with full retract, partial retract, peck distance? Any rules of thumb? Thanks.
Apparently, people want feeds and speeds tips on the podcast.
Yeah, apparently feeds and speeds.
I guess that's telling AJ he needs to make a feeds and speeds YouTube video, like he's been talking about for how long?
I have been talking about that one for a long time.
Yes.
For A36, I don't tend to have issues with. I just kind of use the speeds and feeds that are in the Fusion tool library. Those tend to work pretty well for me. I tend to chip break everything, probably more than I should. Though I guess with carbide drills, you maybe don't need to.
Especially with TSC.
Yeah, if you have TSC, I'm guessing he doesn't.
Send it.
5/8 deep, so that's 6 times diameter. That's probably in chip breaking cycle and not full retract cycle realm, I
Probably.
would imagine. Center drill, I used to never ever center drill, and I have found that to be actually kind of useful, as much as it
If you have
pains
split
me.
point.
Get a stubbier drill if you can, but I tend to just use the Fusion defaults and like it's fine.
I am
So
not the right person to talk about this, but I will talk about my experience with a flippy floppy Tormach 770. Um, every drill that I have ever run through that machine, it makes noise. It doesn't ever sound happy. I scrapped one of my Xometry test part attempts because I skipped center drilling and then drilled it with a 188 drill, and it walked and opened up 2 thou. If it matters, then center drill for sure, because I did not have those issues while center drilling. Yeah, just making sure that, again, it's taking a cut. You're talking carbide drills. So just let her eat. Carbide can take a lot. I drilled a lot of holes by hand in titanium with a hand drill and carbide drills, and they survived remarkably well for what they were and for what I was sending them through. They're not very drill shaped anymore after that. But yeah, A36 is not that crazy. Like, I do A36 on the Tormach, and it's not aluminum, but it's also not the worst. So yeah, just refer to our answers for parting blades. Slightly slower SFM than you would usually, and make sure it stays in the cut. Peck it for sure. Like, pecking is not going to hurt you. If you can, make sure your coolant is like actually pointed in the hole / at the tip of the drill. So as the drill comes out, it blows the chips off the end of the drill and in the hole. Yeah. My Tormach, the drills make noise running Kyle's on those 440C parts. I mean, he runs that thing at like 4,000 RPM, 3,000 RPM through 440C, and you wouldn't know that it was running. There's no spindle load. There's no, just nothing. And it just blows a hole right through it. And it was very surprising. And I realized I should probably take some time and learn what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah. Center drilling, again, does matter more than you'd think on deep holes. Because even if that drill tip walks, let's say like 5/10 when it first goes in, like 5/10 is, probably nothing within your tolerance. But as that drill pushes deeper and deeper, that little 5/10 offset between the hole and the center line of your spindle is going to kind of bend that drill over as it goes down. And the deeper you go down, the more angle that it's going to put on that drill. And even if, you get to the end of your hole and it's a deviation of like a thou or two, that's a ton of extra rubbing on that drill in places where it's not designed to rub. So that adds a lot of heat, which A36 is a little bit more in the gummier category. It's obviously not aluminum or titanium, but there's at least some amount of gumminess in it being a mild steel. That will build heat, which will cause things to expand and more friction and more worse. So for deep drilling or even mildly deep drilling, I would just go ahead and center drill.
I would too. I mean, if I was running that on my machine, like we're kind of in the realm small diameter end mills, I might drill it undersize and come in and interpolate it. Like you would need probably a 10x 10xd 16th inch, but like I would do that.
Yeah, I even on this one, I don't think I would interpolate this, even though I am a big fan of interpolation over drilling, because you would need unless you happen to have a 2mm or 2.5mm end mill, because a 2.5mm end mill is 0.098, and this is 0.1094.
Yeah,
that wouldn't be too outrageous of a stick out. But like my closest standard tool would be a long reach 1/16, and 5/8 on a 1/16 is a little outrageous.
Yeah, it'd be
so I would drill
10x.
it. Yeah, 10x.
Yeah,
but
I mean, you can buy a 2.5mm 4 flute long for $14.97 on Haas Tool. So I don't know.
Uh,
Again,
another thing is coolant concentration. You can up your coolant concentration, and it will help a little bit for
yes,
drilling. I mostly normally do that for tapping. I'll put in some extra coolant when I'm tapping, but
it
it would work
especially
for
helps when you
drilling.
don't have a 200-gallon sump.
Yeah, this is true. I can change the concentration of my coolant much easier at home on my 1100 or not 1100, my 1500 or my
1500. Yeah,
my
because the
Haas. But
1500 is like what, between 30 and 60 gallons.
I want to say it's 40.
Yeah,
I have very low confidence in that number, though.
yeah. I don't know. I haven't spent too much time looking at the spec page, just the price sheet lately.
Yeah,
One of these days.
I know a
Yeah,
guy.
coolant
We can
concentration.
hook you up with one.
That's a good trick right there too. Is keep an eye on that, and yeah, let it go a little rich for stuff like that. They
But I
will.
think you'll be
Thick
fine.
coolant will absolutely make your small end mills deflect, though. Like,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I've
That's
definitely
not
run
what I've
into that.
seen, but Sean, I think you'll be fine. Like this
Yeah.
isn't that crazy. I would do it with a high speed steel drill, no hesitation. So
Yeah, go take your, if you're using Fusion, go dump it in a pre-tool and see what it says, and then probably just use
that's
that, and
interesting.
it'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
If you haven't used pre-tool yet, go do it. It's amazing.
Speaking of that, one of the videos that I want to do soon is a video on our tool library, the Subtract tool library,
Sure.
which I think we need a GitHub for all of our like open source processes and stuff. I don't know where a better place to host that
It would
because
be
I want to
simple enough
open
to put a
source our tool
resources page on
library.
the website.
Yeah, that's true.
But GitHub's great. We already have a Subtract GitHub.
Okay. But our tool library is getting close to a point where we can release it, and I think it'll be useful to at least a large number of people. With that on my list is to build a kind of a standardized toolbox for it with bins and Kanbans. So when we release that, you'll be able to just go to our library, download it, stick it into Toolpath or just Fusion. You'll be able to print the storage bins, the Gridfinity storage bins for it. You'll be able to print the Kanban cards, and it'll just be, for anyone who wants to use it, it's just an out of the box tool library system. It's not perfect. It never will be, but especially if we get some community feedback and, use that open source mentality on it, I think it'll be useful to a lot of people. And I bought toolboxes for it, like the physical objects. I don't know if this is a terrible idea or not. I don't know if they're going to hold up, but I got the like IKEA Alex drawer sets for them. I'm a little bit worried that they'll fall apart, but I'm thinking if it's just tools and you're not putting tool holders in there, we can come up with a standardized layout of those toolboxes. So if somebody wants to adopt our tool library system, they're spending $150 on IKEA furniture. They're 3D printing some bins. They're doing the Kanbans. And that's like a year's worth of work for most shops, is getting those things standardized.
You can have the cabinet, including tools to put in it and all the 3D printing materials and the time before you could buy a Lista cabinet that would do the same thing.
I understand why most shops use nice, expensive Lista cabinets. But I think in terms of the most accessibility for the most shops out there, like everybody has an IKEA within driving range, or they can have it ordered. And it's just like a very standard thing. So I think it makes the most sense for us to, send out to our Subtract shops and then also open source for any shop to use that they desire.
And if you have an IKEA close by, then it gives you a reason to go eat some meatballs.
Yeah.
It's the only reason why I go to IKEA.
But maybe wait 6 months to make sure my cabinets don't fall apart. That's the caveat.
Yeah, I really wish Harbor Freight would bring back. They had their smallest of the US General boxes was like a bunch of really skinny small drawers. And it was the entire box was just these little thin drawers. And their newest version of that is not that, and now has a different variance of thickness of drawer or depth of drawers, which like for a mechanic, which is really what those are designed for, it makes sense. But you used to be able to buy those for like $300, and I would have bought like 9 of them if I could have. I think Harrison has a couple in his shop from the tour. I have the 40 something or 50 something inch box for my like main machining stuff box. You cannot compare them to like the Husky, because I've also got a Husky, and I also have one of the like cheap Harbor Freight boxes. You cannot compare it to those. The cheap Harbor Freight ones compared to the Husky, genuinely the like higher end ones compared to Snap-on boxes. Like that's the comparison that you should be drawing.
The US General boxes,
Yeah.
you mean? Yeah, those are actually pretty nice.
Yeah, I think Yukon is the cheap in-house Harbor Freight box.
They have the Yukon boxes, and I have like 2 of those that are the rolling tool boxes with the wood desk. Those are actually pretty nice.
Yeah, they're
fine. But they have ones that I don't even think they have a brand on them that are just kind of cheap and junky, and those I wouldn't buy. But the Yukon ones with the wood top I like a lot.
Yeah, I have one of those in my shop, and it's fine. Back in my old day job at the robotics company, we were like shared a storage unit / shop space with like 9 different Snap-on drivers. And so I got to play with a bunch of boxes, and they always tried to convince me to take out a loan to buy a box I really didn't need. And like, yeah, they're nice boxes. They feel thicker. They feel, nice. And compared to a Husky box, they feel way better. But then you touch one of those Harbor Freight boxes, and it's like, oh, this is like, I can buy this box for $500 or $600, and I can buy the same Snap-on box for like $4,000. Oh, yeah, okay, sure, it makes sense. Harbor Freight's definitely stepping up in the quality world. They're great for in the shop. I've got, like I was messing with crescent wrenches all the time to adjust stuff on my fixture plate or hold downs or whatever. I got tired of it, so I just went and bought like their complete wrench set. I think it was the Icon one. Like, yeah, I spent like $100 on it, but it's as nice as Snap-on, nicer than Husky. But like, I own some Snap-on wrenches that were $100 for one wrench.
Yeah,
for, like a singular wrench was $100 from them, and I got a complete set from Harbor Freight. Yeah, definitely not there's still some cheap junk from there. Knipex makes those plier wrench with the parallel faces, smooth jawed. I have actual Knipex. I have this 4-inch ones from Knipex. They're amazing. Harbor Freight makes a knockoff of the 8 or the 10-inch. I don't like the grips as much, but functionality, they're just as good.
One tool that I am absolutely sold on buying the high-end version of like now and forever. And I'm sorry, I say it Knipex. I know that's probably not technically correct, but the Knipex side cuts, like they're wire cutters with the hardened steel jaws. They're so much above and beyond anything that I've ever used before that I can never go back to regular side cuts. Yeah. They are so much nicer.
Yeah. I have the mini set from them, the like full size, we called them, probably not the right word, dikes for forever, diagonal cutters.
No, that's a pretty common name. Yeah.
And I also have their mini bolt cutters. They have a set of like, you imagine like a big bolt cutter, just a little handheld set. And if you're touching anything with steel in it, that's what you use, because otherwise you'll mar the jaws of your diagonal cutters.
Well, the ones I have, they're hardened steel.
But mine are too. So but if you try to cut a piece of piano wire with them, definitely get the mini bolt cutters. You will.
Okay, I'll look into those.
You're still going to spend like $100 on them, but like again, heirloom quality tools that will be passed on and are nice, and yeah, they make some really nice stuff. I've been really impressed with, I think it's Wera, Wera.
I like Wera too.
Like very impressed with some of their stuff. And then
I like the Weha screwdrivers, not Wera, Weha.
The Weha
I use
ones.
them a lot. Like if I need a like an Allen wrench screwdriver that I'm going to use on fixtures, I'll go buy the Weha version because they're not that expensive and they're really nice. And I like their handle shape that's like a hexagon.
Oh, interesting.
But they don't roll off the table and they're very comfortable for me.
I have a set of Milwaukee sockets, deep 3/8 drive sockets that are square, and it's the weirdest thing ever. And I was like, why are these like this? And then I put them on a slanted bench one time and they didn't roll away. And I was like, oh, I understand now. Yeah. I understand 100%.
I have a tool problem that I haven't solved yet. So for this production job, I'm using those little import vices, the little self-centering ones. And they've been working great. Almost no problems with them. The one problem I have had is I'm tightening them with a torque wrench. And the sockets I have that go on my torque wrench, I believe it's a 10 millimeter socket. All of them that I've been able to find in the right size are 12 points. And the 12 points round over the corner of that little hex. And I've had a hard time finding 6 points for that. To the point where I've had to go steal a couple of the screws from my other import vices and put them onto the ones that I'm using for this production because I'm just chewing through them.
What size is it?
I think it's just a 10 millimeter.
A 10 millimeter. You need a 10 millimeter 6-point like socket or open-ended wrench?
Socket. And I don't remember if it's a 3/8 or a 1/4 inch drive, but that was one of my problems. I kept finding them. I could find 6 points in the wrong size, whatever one it was.
Interesting.
But in the size I had, I couldn't find any.
You could definitely, I guarantee you could buy a set that has the right one in it. But can you buy a single? I had good luck buying, given the last job I worked for, we shopped at Home Depot because if they saw Home Depot on your credit card receipt, they just didn't even ask you about it. It was, if you bought something at Home Depot, they just assumed it was fine. So we bought a lot of stuff from there just because they wouldn't question it. I feel like they always had a really good selection of like individual sockets. You're going to pay like $15 for one socket compared to you're going to spend $30 for a complete set. But if you just need that one, check there maybe if you have one close to you. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't actually. I don't think we have a Home Depot within 60 miles or so, but
really,
I also haven't looked that hard. I haven't gone deep into this rabbit hole, but I like broke a socket during this run and like went around to all of the stores trying to find one that would work, and I just couldn't find a 6-pointed one.
Should I just put your address in the description below and just have people send you some?
People have done that before. They have just sent me stuff. I still have. What was it? Oh, I got a set of. No, it wasn't helicoils. Was it helicoils? It was something threading related where I mentioned a problem on the podcast and then it just showed up from Amazon from like unknown sender. It's like, oh, thanks, unknown sender. I don't know who you are. I still don't know who it was.
Thank you, Mr. Private Investigator, for finding my address.
Well, it was certainly someone within the community who had probably bought something from Design the Everything.
Oh, and you have also definitely doxed yourself in the Discord on more than one occasion.
Yeah. I'm pretty free about my address within the Discord or whatever. I'm a little bit more careful about it in a YouTube video, but it's also public record.
So there are sometimes weird people on the internet.
There are sometimes weird. Don't show up in my house, weirdos.
Yeah. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah. I got recognized in public. Well, it was still in context in public, but at the Haas demo day, there were people who were like, oh, hey, I know you from the internet. It's like, oh, this is weird.
You define a very specific industry event for the micro niche community that you're in as the public. I mean,
but it wasn't a taps and patience event. Like it was a general machining event.
Did anyone recognize you at IMTS?
Oh yeah. But also we had a meetup at IMTS.
Yeah, but like outside of the meetup.
Yes. It'd probably be, I bet this year at IMTS, there's going to be a lot more people. Oh, speaking of IMTS, Fabtech, which is like IMTS from Temu. That is in September. I will be at Fabtech. I don't know if I'm going to do a meetup or anything, but if you're going to be at Fabtech, tell me, and I will be there.
In September?
In September. It's free, unlike IMTS, in Chicago. It's the same building as IMTS in the same week of September. Yeah. It's much more focused on like sheet metal and fabrication. But they have some machining stuff there. They have a lot of good finishing stuff there that you don't get as much at IMTS. Tumblers and, grinders. They have welding, kind of more in that realm. It's more in the fabrication realm. But it's still a fun show. It's free. I'll be there. I don't know. I don't know what days, but if someone tells me that they'll be there for a day, I blocked out that entire week from teaching. So
I may or may not go.
Scott will probably come with me.
Okay. I might join for a road trip then.
Yeah, it's quite a drive for you.
Yeah, definitely.
for you, I wouldn't bother coming to Fabtech. You definitely need to come to IMTS, but
I will definitely be at IMTS. But September, I may be gallivanting around the Midwest/East Coast anyway.
oh, cool. Okay, well, if you're in the area, stop by.
Well, Harrison's not here.
This
Who's
is
gonna
your
do
job.
it? Oh, this is my job. Well,
This is
guys,
your job.
thanks everyone for joining. This has been Jacob from Zone of Precision and AJ from Audacity Micro, and both of us from Subtract Manufacturing. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Sorry again for skipping a week, but if you guys have any questions, please go join the Patreon and come hang out with us on Discord sometimes. Otherwise, hope you guys have a good week and get some machining done. Thanks. Bye.
Taps and patience, our daily grind. In this machine shop, we'll always find joyous struggles, all intertwined. Taps and patience, one of a kind.